you have infinite options on the ice as a hockey player. Now, how do you make decisions? Well, think of it like a video game. Think of it like you're playing an NHL video game, and think about the fact that you have an infinite number of combinations of buttons you could click, right? You could play it, you could press a million different buttons, and the game will never be the same. Like, there's no exact copy. Like, you know, there's every unique snowflake. Like, every snowflake is unique. You're never going to have a copy, right? No game will be the same. So this means that you have infinite options in a game. There are so many different plays that could be made, and there's no such thing as a perfect thing to do. But there are things that you can do that are more effective. But the thing is, most players think that, well, because there's so many options, well, I'm just going to wing it. I'll just show up and I'll just play, right? And this works because the best athletes who have high natural talent, they make it work, right? Because they wing it, and they're better than people skill-wise or physically, and they might even have better natural decision-making abilities. So then they succeed, and then we assume, oh, winging it is the solution. But the rest of us are left struggling to compete. Not because we don't have the ability, not because we don't have the talent to be able to figure it out, but because we just don't understand how to access our talents right now, so our decision-making suffers. So when we wing it, we don't know how to access our abilities like some of these great players do, and then we're screwed. And I was lucky to have a dad who did like teach me generally like how this stuff works. He studied a ton of Darryl Belfry stuff, and he explained a lot of it to me, understanding how to build a game structure, understanding how to access your talents, but I didn't want to listen to him. If you're a parent listening to this, I understand the frustration, because I now look back at things my dad explained to me and it's like, I feel like if he had have explained it in more clear detail, and also if he wasn't my dad, I would have listened a lot more clearly and probably would have taken it with much more excitement, applied it, seen the results, trusted him more, built a good cycle. But I didn't. I pushed against it, and that cost me because I was not even close to my potential. I think I missed out a ton on my potential. And so here's the thing. When it comes to how to orient your decision-making, there are things that already orient our decision-making, right? Like, there are infinite options, but you don't just wing it. Because if you wing it, you're not going to make a very effective development. You're not going to make a good development over the course of your career. Your development is going to suck. And when we play, we are already guided by rules, right? We're guided by the rules of the game, and then we're guided by like our team systems, because our coach says you got to do this. Like, we understand our position, right? We understand like, okay, I'm a center, so generally I do this. I'm a winger, I generally do this. I'm a defenseman, I generally do this, right? We don't shoot the puck in our own net instinctually. Like, we instinctually do not do that because we know that's not the right thing. We instinctually don't go offside very often because we understand instinctually without thinking that's the right thing to do. We are guided by rules. We're guided by our goals, which our goal is to score and not be scored on. So we make decisions based on that without even thinking about it. And these guide our instincts. That's what our instincts are. It's the things we do when we're not thinking, right? They guide the way that we play. So what really guides you as a player is understanding who you are as a player. If you want to improve your hockey IQ, you have to understand who you are as a player, right? So understanding how you fit into the team is going to make a key shift in the way that you make decisions. So let me break this down so you know I'm not just like completely bullshitting you here. Like, for example, a defenseman makes a decision based on the fact that he is a defenseman. He's rarely going to rush ahead of the play and look for breakaways. And the reason for that is because he makes decisions based on his position. Now, a player like Erik Karlsson in the NHL might play a little differently because he has a more offensive role, right? And plays a more offensive volume shooting defensive archetype. So he's a defenseman, but he plays a offensive defenseman shooting style, which I consider an archetype, right? And to be even more specific, Erik Karlsson and Cale Makar both are very similar roles on their team, but they have a different archetype for their team, so they play differently. That's why you'll see Karlsson jump into the rush and make these really crazy like kind of flowy plays and look for big stretch passes, where Cale Makar likes to try to possess the puck and be more shifty, and he looks to attack using like his elite speed. Right? And a lot of these things develop because of your abilities, your unique identity traits, but the way that we play is guided by who we are. You're starting to see what I'm saying? Like, being able to read a decision is not just filtered through like, oh, I'm just going to wing it and do some random stuff. It's guided by the rules of the game, right? It's guided by understanding what our goals are as a player, and then it's guided by who we are as a player, right? It's guided by our position, number one, by our role, number two, our archetype, and then our identity. So let me break those down. Position, that's the position we play on a team. So center, winger, defenseman. Then we have role. Where do you fit into the team? So what line are you on? What's your line's job, right? That's your role. Then what's your archetype? Your playing style. Are you a power forward? Are you a playmaker? Are you a shooter? Are you a defensive forward? Are you a defensive defenseman, right? You understand your archetype. And then what's your identity? Your own unique skills and style that separate you from anyone else with a similar archetype, right? So somebody may be a power forward, but there's a difference between a power forward, somebody like, I would consider like Tom Wilson is kind of like a power forward. And then you could, actually a good example of a power forward shooter type is like Ovechkin, and then someone like a Pasternak. Like, they're both shooter power forwards, but they play the game very differently. They have their own very unique identity traits. Even though they have the same position, same position, they're both wingers. They both have a very similar role, right? Top line shooter power forward, right? Like top line, score goals, play offensive. Archetype, power forward, shooter. And then identity is totally different. They have totally different identity traits. So that's what's cool about hockey, is you can kind of put these things into boxes to help you understand how to think about your development, because you can look at position, role, archetype, identity, and start to understand, well, how do I manipulate these things to become a better player? Now, when we play, we have to be able to flow and just play naturally. We don't want to get caught up in thinking like in a game you're trying to consciously make these decisions. But when we understand these on a fundamental level, we don't hesitate in games because we know who we are instinctually. What we want these to be is so instinctual that they feel just like when we talked about the rules of the game, like not going offside, how that's like a instinct, or not shooting the puck in your own net is an instinct to not do that. We want to be guided by understanding our position, our role, our archetype, and our identity. And that's why I have players do so much visualization in our programs, not because it's the be-all, end-all, but because it can help to build instincts in understanding your position, role, archetype, and identity, right? It can help you understand those things, which allows you to then make better decisions, right? They guide us. They help us be clear on who we are, so then it orients our decision-making, and we suddenly have better hockey IQ. Right? And there's a lot of other components that come into hockey IQ, but that simplifies it down and allows us to get clear on foundationally. If we get that, then we can bring in the tactics like shoulder checking, or understanding angles, or understanding speed and timing. You can apply tactics after the core strategy and principles are applied. The way that I think of it is like there's the foundation of the pyramid, and then like that's understanding position, role. So position, role, archetype, identity. Then you bring in all the other stuff. Then you bring in the small tactics. But you also kind of have to fit in your team systems and those other things. So it's a little bit more complicated. And again, we'll go more in depth, but this is a component that I think just gets completely ignored in hockey, that you make decisions based on who you are, but nobody breaks down who you are into enough of a clear understanding to actually do anything about it. This allows you to actually do something about it. So your action steps are, take some time this week and actually write down your position. Then write down your role. Then write down your archetype, then your identity. So what I mean is, position, obviously simple, takes 2 seconds. But then understand what are the positions you might play in addition, right? Things might change if you're on a different side of the ice or whatever it is. What role do you have? So what line are you on? What's your line's job? How might that change if you were to shift like up or down, depending on what's expected? You want to be prepared to move up and down in the lineup. Then what archetype do you have? And what archetype might you need to shift into? Because identity shift is about understanding how to shift into different styles of play. And then what are your identity traits? What are the things that you do uniquely that make you different than other people? And how can you double down on the good things? How can you remove the bad things so you can do more of the good things, right? Gain clarity and really understand who you are so you can make better decisions. Once you have clarity, then you can be better and understand what your team's tactics are, understand how you fit into that, and you can just play better. Hockey's way more fun when you understand these things. And then we can get into the tactics, and then you can have a basis to understand when you watch all these other YouTube videos and understand a new concept or tactic. You can now know how to apply those tactics to your game. So that's going to make the difference for you. Hope you have a great week. I'll see you guys at the next level. I'll talk to you soon.